Rewound Radio. What a fool believes is that it's jingle time. That's right. It's jingle time on Rewound Radio. Only a fool would believe it's jingle time. Are you all fools? No, I am the head fool, so we're all good here. This is prompted by a note that came in from Andy Walmsley. Andy is listening in France, apparently, according to his note. And he says, in November 1978, the BBC's national radio stations all changed their positions on the dial. The FM frequencies stayed the same. Could we please hear some of the jingles that Jam produced for this change? You managed to convey this information in jingles, the ones for Radio 2 being particularly elaborate. Okay, so I can certainly play those, and we will. But again, for the benefit of our North American listeners and perhaps listeners in other lands who don't quite understand the scenario here, allow me to once again set the scene for you. This is now 1978 that we're talking about. And the thing is that the national stations that were run by the BBC, they were all serving the entire country. However, they were pretty much on the same frequency. The idea being, well, if you tune to this frequency, no matter where you are, you're going to get Radio 1 or Radio 2. There was 4 of them at the time. And, that didn't really work out all that great because it required a lot of different transmitters to do that. And when you have 2 transmitters that are on the same frequency and you get in between them, there's a zone where they phase out and flange out, and it's really kind of a mess. And so basically, after several years, they decided, okay, we're going to change all these frequencies around to supposedly make it better. Well, this is quite a monumental task because all of these stations had to educate their audience as to where they were going to be. So we, in 1978, as part of what we did for the BBC, we created jingles that would sing this incredibly dry, boring, technical information as part of their campaign to get people to understand that the station that they want to hear is now going to be somewhere else on the dial. And we did that a lot of different ways. So I'm going to play you one, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what the lyrics are all about, because there's a lot to unpack here.
Radio 2 has made a move, but we haven't gone too far. 693 or 909 kilohertz is where we are. If your dial is marked in meters, here's what you need to know. Look for us at 433 or 330. Radio 2 on medium wave and stereo VHF for you.
Okay, what now? All right, so they're talking about 693 or 909 kilohertz. Well, again, North American listeners are going to think those are funny numbers because here the AM radio stations are 10 kilohertz apart. So it's 750, 760, 770, 780, and so forth. But in Europe, they were 9 kilohertz apart, which led to these weird, strange numbers. So that's why they have odd numbers on the AM dial. But then they're also talking about if your dial is marked in meters. Well, the wavelength or the meters is another way of expressing what the frequency is. Instead of kilohertz, which is telling you how many cycles per second they're transmitting on, the wavelength tells you how long each of those cycles is. So they're saying 433 or 330, which is the same as 693 or 909 kilohertz. They also talk about the phrase medium wave, which we refer to as AM. And of course, they had started to call it AM too. But in all of these promos and all of these jingles, they were having to, basically talk to people who may be a bit older and had grown up their whole life with the old terminology of meters and medium wave. So that's why they had us sing it both ways. And then they also in that jingle mentioned VHF, which is FM. So, very high frequency. VHF is what we would call FM in the U.S. and Canada. So, this was really a mouthful to fit into a jingle.
Radio 2 has made a move, and we wanted you to know. Listen in on medium wave on 433 or 330.
Now, I know some of you, if you're really paying attention, are going, well, what good is it having the jingle that says we've made a move if you've already moved? Well, I have to tell you that actually there were several different versions cut of each one of these things where the lyrics were adjusted, and they did have jingles that they played in advance of the move that said, hey, we're going to be moving. So, yeah, they did figure that out. But here's the thing. A lot of people would assume that a jingle that's that specific, that has such a specific use, would have had to be custom written, custom created for the client just to do that thing. Because, who has a jingle sitting on the shelf to talk about all these kilohertz and meters and VHF and all that? Well, as it turns out, no, that wasn't a custom jingle. Now, the diehard fans will know this, but not everybody does. Whenever I would pack up my bag and go to London to spend a week meeting with the great folks from Radio 1 and Radio 2 to figure out what we could do for them in the new package, I brought everything that we had made since the last time I was over there. Every new jingle package, every commercial, everything, because I knew that their needs were so diverse and sometimes so hard to satisfy that you really had to have a big arsenal of things to choose from. And the jingle that you've heard so far on this frequency changing thing was originally not a radio station jingle at all. It was a commercial. It was a commercial that we made for the Arizona State Fair.
Get together for the good times. Take a hand and share the fun. Get together for the good times. It's the fair for everyone. When you're looking for excitement, it's the one that takes you there. It's the only place for everything. It's gotta be a fair. Get together for the good times. It's the fair for everyone.
And then the announcer would come in over that tag ending there and talk about the Arizona State Fair is on now and so forth. But, as soon as they started telling me, okay, we got to fit in all these frequencies and wavelengths and VHF and everything, I said, well, maybe we can rewrite the lyrics to this. And we sat in the office and we did it. And then we used some other tracks to convey these messages as well.
Radio 2's on the move to 693 or 909 kilohertz. That's 433 or 330 meters, medium wave.
And, I guess these jingles did the trick because people noticed them, people remembered, and, Radio 2 didn't go out of business.
Radio 2's on the move to 433 or 330 meters and stereo VHF. Radio 2.
So that was the meters version. The first one was the kilohertz version. And I'm just playing these not only to mark the anniversary of this monumental event that happened 40 years ago this month, but also because, they are unusual jingles. They are not the kind of more music jingles that you're used to hearing, and that's what makes them fun. So what was the original track for that one, you may ask? Yes, go ahead, you may ask. Okay, good. The question or the answer to that is it too was not made for this frequency changing business. It was made to promote a contest on WAYS in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Big waves gives you the sun.
Big Ways Gives You the Sun was the name of the promotion, and it was some kind of contest where they were going to send you on a Caribbean cruise or something like that. And as you could hear, there were never any lyrics over the front of that. It was just flute playing that little melody, and they used it as a bed to promote the contest over. But again, having that in my little bag of tricks, I said, well, we could write lyrics for that. How about just a few more of these?
Stereo VHF 693 and 909 kilohertz. This is Radio 2.
You've probably never heard the word kilohertz sung that sweetly before. But, that was just one of many.
Stereo VHF 433 and 330 medium wave. This is Radio 2.
And again, VHF means FM. So what was that one originally? Well, that track is from a fairly obscure early jam package called On the Move, which was actually a country package that was done for KLAK. And, excuse me, and they had that finger snap effect in there, kind of like WBZ did. We talked about that a few weeks ago. So that was their trademark. Anyway, yes, this is choking me up. Sorry. But anyway, as long as we're talking about Radio 2, let me play you one Radio 2 jingle that's just a normal jingle that doesn't have anything to do with this frequency changing, just because it came from this same year's package, and I like it.
Through the day, through the night, we're always here with you. Stereo Radio 2.
So, not everything we did was full of technical manual terms, full of kilohertz and meters and wavelengths and VHF and long wave, but it was sure an interesting challenge to try and squeeze all that stuff in there. And there were some other things that they did to promote that change. We're going to hear a little bit more when we come back. You are going to come back, aren't you? Oh, please, baby, come back. Rewound Radio, Jon Wolfert, the Fool on the air here, having fun talking to you about music and jingles and such as that. And we were talking about the massive frequency change, dial position change that took place 40 years ago this month for all the BBC national stations in the UK. And, of course, the jingles that we did were just a small part of the publicity and the promotion that they had planned to do for months to educate the public as to what was going on there. It's similar to a few years ago when they shut off all the analog TV transmitters in the U.S., and you had to adjust to getting your signal digitally, and they had a lot of promos about that for months just to try and ease the shock a little bit. Well, the BBC, of course, did the same thing. There were ads, there were mailers, there was all kinds of things. And here is one of the most amazing things. Now, this is a little bit long, but listen to it just once so you can say you've heard it, because it's pretty phenomenal in terms of, first of all, the fact that you've probably never heard a song with these kind of lyrics before. And also, just from a performance standpoint, the fact that this was recorded a cappella, all in one pass, as a live performance. And the group that did this is called the King's Singers. The King's Singers is a vocal group that began in May of 1968, and it was formed by 6 recently graduated choral scholars from King's College in Cambridge, England, and that's why it's called the King's Singers, because they all got together in college. But they did this thing in 1978 for the BBC, and it's called Some Enchanted Wavelengths.
BBC Radio announces important changes from the 23rd of November 1978. A new international frequency agreement comes into effect, and many of the frequencies used for the BBC will be changed at that time. Radio 1, Radio 2, and Radio 3 will be found upon the medium wave, whereas Radio 4 will be located on the long wave. The principal new frequencies and wavelengths will be as follows. For sets marked in frequencies, Radio 1 will be on 105.3 and 108.9 kilohertz, which is to say, where wavelengths are concerned, 285 and 275 meters. Radio 2, brackets in kilohertz, close brackets, will be on 693 and 909, which is in wavelengths 433 and 330. Radio 3, as you might expect, will be different from the others, in that there is no choice of frequency and no alternative wavelength. The frequency is 1215, and as the wavelength will be 247 meters, it will be renamed Wonderful Radio 3. Moving now from the medium to the long wave, we shall be principally concerned with Radio 4. This can be discovered on 200 kilohertz or 1500 meters. Listeners to Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Cymru, and to Radio Ulster, most BBC local radio and all VHF services are advised that there will be no change. As a last reminder, the aforementioned changes in wavelengths and frequencies in some cases and lack of changes in wavelengths and frequencies in others as outlined above will come to pass in 1978 on the 23rd of November.
So, there you are. If you ever wondered what it would sound like to have an entire legal brief sung as a church chorale, you know, that's probably not something you want to hear every day, but it's good that you've heard it once. And it was just an amazing a cappella. I have an amazing a cappella.
Jon Wolfert.
And there it is. All right, back to the music now.